All you got to do is
You gotta stay hot. Boom.
home runs, baby. Home runs.
Flip it.
I love the tough calls. I like them. Get better every day.
With aspirations of selling for close to $1 billion.
All you got to do is you gotta stay hot. Welcome back, everybody, to another Act Stay Hot. This is Act 36. Troy, welcome back, buddy. It's been a week since I last saw you.
For today, man. Well,
we got a big interview lined up today. Breezy Beaumont, head of growth and marketing for Correlated. And she's going to dive. So I've never met her before. You've never met her before, but you introduced her to me as like, she's like the expert, the thought leader when it comes to product-led growth.
yeah, she's probably one of like the young professional thought leaders in PLG. And for listeners out there who don't know what that is, product-led growth, it's basically when, and I'm probably going to butcher this, and she's going to say something later in the call. It's great, but PLG is really it's when the product ultimately is at the forefront of driving growth for your business and driving sales, and also you can input marketing in. So, for example, for Greencube X, usually what we do is ultimately we get them to sign up to the platform. They can use it. That's ultimately a PLG, just a small PLG strategy. We get someone to sign up to the platform and use it right from their website. Me personally, I believe it to be like the glue between marketing and sales, because ultimately you can drive so many people to your website to sign up for your product, and then ultimately you can capture your salesperson to take data from that product, the PLG strategy, then ultimately upsell, cross-sell, and create more clients there. But Breezy's going to tell us what it's really about. You don't have to take my word for it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Man, and for me to be sitting in this position, I know I've said it all the time, but it's almost like I'm learning with the audience when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like I have a front row seat into an entrepreneur like yourself, you know, building a massive company, massive scale company with massive ambition and whatever. Like you're doing stuff that I don't know many people your age doing, you know, I mean, there's a couple that come to mind, but like tech company, when I think of like company in your stages and going out and fundraising money like this, I'm like, holy shit, like that's some Shark Tank, Dragon's Den type stuff. And
it's better than that.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's what I mean.
We ain't here for some.
So yeah,
make it warm in the Alps. Like, come on, man.
That's right. And so like here I am, and in all of the questions that I ever ask you, any of our guests that have come on the show, it's like genuine questions that, because I don't know any of this stuff. You know, I went to, and here's something funny. Troy, I have a business degree. I went to school. I went to business school.
Right.
Yet I don't know much about business and how it's done. Right.
Buddy, I had an economics degree. Like, think about looking at ISLM models and looking at the growth demand curves and utility curves and going, well, how does that relate to anything when these models were created in the 1700s or the 1600s, right? Like, it's just, but what I would say is utility curves, actually, I like, just quickly on an economics tangent. Utility curves, because on the y-axis is happiness and on the x-axis is quantity. And so really what you can do is, I picture our business with Greencube as a utility curve. Right. And so when you increase the satisfaction by decreasing the quantity of it, that's really what a lead, right? Correct. When you can deliver them a hyper qualified personalized lead for a fraction of the effort, you ultimately increase their utility at the end of the day, which is super.
But it is interesting to note that like there's so much more access to information, applicable information, up-to-date information in you know, entrepreneurship, business, sales online, YouTube, podcasts, that you could argue is more applicable than the stuff that people are learning in university. And the only way to learn, like you are, like, and it's funny, here we have 36 weeks worth of your documentation of you actively going out there and messing up and failing. The only way you're going to learn how to build a business and how to fundraise money is to jump in it. and you can't jump in it in business school. You're not jumping in by reading a text, memorizing a text, writing an exam, and saying, okay, what is product-led growth? It is this. You don't become an expert until
it's
you're
a new term.
in there.
PLG is a new term, right? Like, I don't know the definitive date when it's around, but I only started figuring what the heck it was when I saw Breezy's LinkedIn post and talking about PLR, and I was like, well, what the heck is PLR? And then she jumps on, starts talking about it, and I go, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. And guess what, Tristen, I didn't even get it at that point because I was just
of course.
And then we launched, because we didn't really, PLR and PLG is really for like SaaS businesses, right? If you're a service business, or if you're like the different types, like I guess coupons can be a PLG strategy, but really it's for like SaaS products. And so we didn't have a SaaS product at the time. And then when we launched GCX, I was like, oh, it's all clicking. It all actually makes sense, right? And so this is the PLG strategy. This is the PLG strategy. I'd be like in the Slack channels coming up with ideas for our team, our tech team, going PLG number 1, PLG number 2, PLG number 3. Right. And that's it, right? Every single basic idea, you leverage the product, and the product almost has a brain of itself to be the marketing engine and a growth engine. I think is so cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to ask you.
As you can tell, I'm very excited for this call today.
And I just, as much as we're shitting on university, or as much as I am, like, university is great for certain things. Like, if you want to go become a doctor here. So just a little update on my life. I am down in Miami, not Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and I've been down here for a week now, just because my grandmother and step-grandfather were over in Freeport in the Bahamas, where I was visiting them, and then he ended up getting sick, airlifted him to here, and so I've just been spending my entire days in the hospital, right? And the amount of respect that I've gained for nurses and the stuff that they have to deal with every single day with complete strangers that they don't even know, it's been incredibly eye-opening. But that's an example of a career path that you would need to go to a traditional university and study for, right? Versus the whole entrepreneurship route, building a business, jumping into sales. The only way you're going to learn how to sell, like Clark and Anthony, for example, they could have gone to business school and learned about sales, but you can't become a great salesperson until you're actively dialing the phone, jumping on Zoom calls, doing demos and selling, generating SOWs and sending out that kind of stuff, right?
I don't even know if you learn for MBA programs. I don't even know if you learn about sales.
Yeah, how do you? Is there a sales program?
I don't even know if there's a sales course.
I know that.
Interested. We should look that up. We should look up to see any top MBA program where they actually have sales courses, because I know there's marketing, I know there's finance, I know there's I don't know, entrepreneurship. I mean, there's a bunch of other courses, but I would love to see if they have a sales course, and I would love to go sit in on one of those classes.
Sure.
It's actually very interesting.
Sure, to see what people are actually learning and whether or not it's applicable to your company and whatnot. No. Before we bring Breezy in here, I want to look at. I came across a study the other day.
Yep.
And it pertains to the work at home, and obviously we're all well aware that the COVID, everything has shifted the way people are working. People are working remotely now more than ever. Here's an example. I'm working, thank God that I have the ability to do that, or else I wouldn't have been able to come down here and help my grandmother out. But this new study shows that working from home actually saves employees 70 minutes a day. So the latest results of a monthly survey of 4,000 US workers provide a few interesting insights about work from home. The January survey, which polled workers aged 20 to 64, we fall into that category, Troy, showed that remote workers save about 1 full hour every day by not commuting. That's common sense. I think I would have guessed that, because how many times do people, even university kids are feeling it, people that go to school online, they're literally rolling out of bed we're not recommending this, but they're literally rolling out of bed 5 minutes before their Zoom meeting and jumping on. So they're saving all that bunch of time. And then they've shown that another 10 minutes is saved by skipping grooming tasks like showering, shaving, and putting on makeup. Again, makes sense. You should be showering every day anyways, but makes sense. You don't have to wake up as early to make sure you catch the bus to get into the office. So of those 70 daily minutes saved, about 30 minutes are spent working, which tacks on an additional 2.5 hours onto the work week. So you're gaining about 2.5 hours each week for work. Whether or not that's true, Troy, you seem skeptical. And employees don't seem to mind the extra labor, as the average worker plans to stay remote for 2 days a week, even after the pandemic ends. So the economists, I can't read, who work out of Stanford, MIT, the University of Chicago, and Mexico's ITAM, began their polling shortly after the start of the pandemic to gauge its impact on Americans' work startup. Give me your thoughts on that, Troy. Do you really think people are saving 70 minutes and half of that time's going to their company?
No.
You don't, right? Because just as much as people are saving time commuting, they're putting on, they're turning off their cameras and they're scrolling Instagram when they're bored in a meeting, or they're texting their friends, or they're getting up and making eggs,
or they're jumping on the Peloton as Billy was last week.
Yeah, that's right. So true.
I don't mind. Listen, I don't mind flexible work hours, but productivity's got to be there. Like, I'm all for work-life balance. I'm all for it.
Correct.
I've said that from day one. I don't know how to do it yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. But for people, I get it. Like, they don't have equity stakes in businesses. They don't make X amount of dollars. So I recognize that the situation for every different type of person, every different type of worker, every type of environment is different. And we've always said, like, their utility is different, right? So what makes them happy and what makes their life balanced and great is different than what makes Tristen's and Troy's and everyone else's. And I totally respect that. What I don't like is this notion that it saves people time, because I think for some workers it does. Okay. I think for some workers it definitely saves them time, and they're great workers and they can work from anywhere and it's great. I think for young Gen Z millennial people coming out that have never worked in the workforce before, never worked for a company before, that are still, this is a means of taking advantage of the system. I think it's Correct. A means of taking advantage of the way it's going. And I really don't like it, because you're using COVID as an excuse to ultimately be able to not be in the office and work. And again, I told my sales team this. I told them this, guys. I don't care where you work. If you're here any day of the week, if you get me that 30 and 10. Mm-hmm. But they're more maybe, but listen, it's they haven't even reached close to the 30 and 10, like, of where they want to be, right? And like, they're not close. Well, they're getting there, like halfway. It's their first month or whatever. They're like probably 20% off on their pace. And they have, sometimes Clark was at the office for a week, and Anthony was in and out one day, and they would leave and take an afternoon off. And so it basically, I said, boys, like, let's call a spade a spade. Are you guys going home, and are you doing outreach, and are you really doing that? And I can't see it. Do you have your crazy Troy walking up and down the hallways, knocking on your door, saying, where are my calls? No. But listen, there's got to be a level of trust. And I think in some aspects of some jobs, maybe you can work remotely and it can work out. But I think also it takes a certain personality to be able to develop the trust of the employer on the other side.
Correct.
Earn the right to work remotely. Correct. And I think getting people, listen, we started interviewing kids that come out of university, and they're like, I want to work remote. Well, okay, well, have you ever worked in a job before? Have you ever worked anywhere? And they go, well, no, I want to work remote. I want to work 3 days remote, and these are my terms. I want to make 6 figures. Yeah, okay, man. Go to the next employer and ask them for you. But people are so desperate nowadays, right? The job market's so competitive that's a thing. But listen, I came up in an environment where in the office, 8 o'clock, you're not, and I'd stay till 8 o'clock at night, and I grinded and worked, and I see myself getting better because of that, and I want other people to get better.
Troy, the biggest thing that I think going into the office does for somebody is it creates routine, it creates discipline,
Accountability.
and it creates accountability. Because if you're working from home and you're just rolling out of bed and you're not brushing your teeth and you're not doing your makeup and you're not showering, then well, hey, do you then you're not holding yourself to a higher standard by doing that. And I think if you get yourself up an hour earlier, then it forces you to go to bed an hour earlier.
I just think you got to earn the right to work remote.
You
yeah, earn the right to work remote.
It comes down to your performance.
That's it. I don't care where you work. You can
Correct.
be in the Alps in Uzbekistan for all I care, right?
Yes.
Hopefully you have internet connection. But
That's right.
But like, you have to earn that.
Yeah.
Like the fact that kids are coming out of school and they're asking for remote work and they're asking.
You haven't proved anything yet.
I disagree with it, and that's why like certain industries like the big banks and ultimately all these kind of investment banks in the world, they're saying, okay, yeah, you want to work from home, you don't work here anymore. That's it, right? Because it's just like, are they a VP level person? Have they been here for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years?
Yeah.
No, they haven't done the grind. They haven't earned the right to work remote. You need to earn that. That's my
and then just on that, I know Breezy's in the waiting room and she's going to kill us. She's going to kill us because we're going over time here. But some exciting news. Your boy is going to be living down the road.
Oh!
So
there's no excuse for you not to come in every day.
Zero excuse. And this is I'm excited for that. The fact that now I don't have to commute an hour just to get into the office. It's gonna make me want to stop into the office.
Congrats, buddy. Congrats.
Hey, we made it. So like that's going to be a great addition to my routine by walking down. Even if I come into the office for 2 hours, 3 hours, it's going to hold me accountable to check up on my daily
it's also kind of fun to work
activities.
here too.
And it's fun, man. I got the putter in the hallway. I'm going and getting a couple putts in every day. Hey, when I was in the office the other night, I finally hit the long putt. Now I did.
You did.
I swear to God.
You did not. There was nothing. Breezy.
So this is good. Well, we're going to kick this off. Breezy, welcome to the show. Stay Hot is a podcast that's kind of documented. We started out documenting the journey of Troy Crema as he's building this tech startup in Toronto. And basically we meet every week and I pick his brain about what's going on in the office, what challenges is he coming across, what has he learned, what's bugging him right now. And so you're actually our second guest to date to come on. And I think it's going to be great to pick other people's brains and see how our audience can learn. Basically, all we're trying to do here is align ourselves with Greencube's mission, which is enhancing the lives of salespeople through AI, through technology, and kind of disrupting an industry that people struggle with. Troy, would you say the biggest part about sales, or like the most difficult and time consuming part about sales, is prospecting, right? And that's what you guys are tackling?
You can ask Breezy.
Yeah, Breezy, it would be great to pick your brain in what you've seen in your professional career. But before we get there, just tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got to the position that you're in today.
Yeah, sure. So I run growth and marketing at Correlated. Correlated helps sales teams at product-led growth companies. Actually, I guess it's kind of a mix of sales and customer success and others on the revenue side. But we help you understand how people are using your product so that you can reach out in those key moments based on actions people are taking in your product. So then we also plug into like the downstream tools that you would use in your daily basis so that we don't have to pull you out of what you're currently doing, but instead sort of like enhance your ability to do your job better.
Sure.
And so that's what I do. And I run growth and marketing here. And so in that, I also manage our SDR team as well.
Beautiful. Troy, what questions, like I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to, we have Breezy here. What questions would you have for Breezy on the side of SDRs? I know we spoke a little bit off camera from an SDR position. You recently hired Clark and Anthony that we're now, introducing to the world. Tell Breezy a little bit about how you've gotten them up to speed with the way you like to sell.
I think I always like to ask like people who manage different sales organizations or salespeople at different companies. I always like to ask them the definition of an SDR. So what does an SDR do, Breezy, at Correlated? Because what I've noticed really quickly, it varies. There's a BDR, SDR, AE. They all vary by definition on what they do on a daily basis across every company. So what does an SDR do at Correlated? And ultimately, how does Breezy get SDRs' energies high and motivate them on a daily basis?
Yeah. People have given so many names at this point that we now have to call people XDRs, since there's an ADR, an SDR, a BDR, everything in between. But yeah, so I'm a big believer that you should not mix inbound and outbound between your development team. So no single person on your, if you're all called SDRs, no single person on the SDR team should be doing both inbound and outbound, in my opinion, just because the function of doing each of those motions is very different. The conversation that you're having is different. The way you should approach it and like kind of push people in different moments is different. And so for us, our SDR team today is only doing outbound. If we do inbound, that's also fine. They can also be on the SDR team, but they'll be like split by based on kind of like what their role is inside of that team. And so they're doing outbound. We can definitely, and I'm sure we'll want to dive into what their outbound looks like, because it's a little bit untraditional. And then for us, inbound is actually handled directly by the sales team. And so that's kind of like the split.
So yeah. Inbound is handled by the sales team.
Yes, because inbound used to require an SDR team because you were getting crappy leads who you needed to actually figure out what needed to happen with them. But instead, all of our content is ungated and completely available. So inbound for us means people either sign up to use the product or requested a demo. And that's pretty much it.
Got it. And as the head of growth and marketing, the marketing aspect of it, what are you guys doing to market to drive inbound ultimately to your website? And are you in charge of that too?
Yes, I am.
Wow.
So we do a lot of community and social marketing. So there's a ton of different Slack communities out there that we're in and answering questions for people and sort of like being a helpful resource in. We do a lot of, try to create content based on questions that we're hearing either on social like LinkedIn or Twitter, or in these various Slack communities. And so based on what we're hearing from the market, that's how we create our content. And then we distribute it back into those places again. And so it naturally feeds itself that we're creating good content and putting it in the places that matter because it was generated from that in the first place. And so then we know that it's kind of like high quality and answering the questions that people are curious about. So we do that. We do some ads where our name is Correlated. So we're competing with the dictionary. So we have to at least have ads on that. Yeah, and then, we're doing some other like social events and things, but I'd say in general, our marketing is very much community, social, brand awareness, content generation type of marketing rather than maybe really highly focused on paid and gated type of content.
Yeah, and Breezy, I just recently started working with Troy here and handling their marketing, and I come from a background of content first, and more specifically for more like personal brands. My experience is more in the personal brands side of things, but now that I'm kind of jumping in and trying to taking on, B2B, how can B2B companies still use that same content first strategy to drive leads of other companies? Because you're no longer going for, in my mind, you know, the personal brand side is how many people can you get to follow you as a thought leader. But you know, it's almost like a different perspective for me now that I'm like, okay, well, it's no longer customers buying the product, it's like whole companies almost. So how does your mind think about that? And I know it's just jumble, and I do that a lot, and I just put out my thoughts and see how you take it. Can a content first strategy work in B2B?
Yes, I think definitely. I think the other thing that we're seeing a lot is the person who used to be the buyer isn't necessarily the one making the decision to buy anymore. So they might still be the one signing on a dotted line. But as we all get busier and more strapped for time and this and that, and also pushing towards that idea of giving your team autonomy to make decisions that would benefit them and benefit the people below them. So the more both of those trends sort of start to happen, the more we're seeing that we need to influence buyers at all stages. Okay. So from the IC, the individual contributor, to the manager, to the director, to the VP, and to the chief, whatever it may be. And so before, we used to focus solely on that top of the line. So the C-suite, maybe VP plus or senior manager plus or something like that. But now it's sort of moving down the way, because you see that managers are asking their team to let them know what's best for them, what can help them be most effective in their roles. And then there's a lot of stakeholders in that buying process, so that it sort of like shifts the way that you want to market as well.
Correct.
So this kind of goes into your outbound strategy here, Breezy. So when you say like all those different hierarchy of people that you're going after, is it a mix of a bag? Do you guys transition that on a week-to-week basis? Do you have different people going after different sectors or different titles or different industries? Like, how do you manage that? And are you more data focused? Are you more like feeling focused on what's happening? How does that all kind of play into it?
Yeah, so we are we're selling to a couple different personas that I kind of touched on earlier. So we primarily sell into sales teams, but it depends who's basically the one either converting free users of a product to paid, which is sometimes the XDR team. Sometimes it's sales, or if we're talking about expanding our existing customers, sometimes that's the customer success team. Right. And so with the different personas, we've decided to build our sequences out currently in a persona-based sequence. And so we have like, manager plus of customer success, of sales, of the XDR team. And then we also are actually educating some of the outside buyers as well. So someone who might come in to help make sure that Correlated is up and running could be ops team or the data team. And so we are doing some education on those, but those are a little bit more of like a no-touch campaign. The other three personas that I mentioned are like hands-on campaign. So that's like the setup of the personas. Yeah. Then we are actually account-based. So the SDRs on my team are assigned accounts. They can also request different accounts or suggest others that should be added to the list based on their research. And so they have accounts that they're going after, and then they go and find these personas and get them into their sequences. And then their sequences which is probably a whole other thing to dive into, but a lot based on like social selling and email, and really about like value adding content rather than just trying to get in front of people.
Very cool. Very cool. And would you say that you guys also target you, essentially, your job title and your role, as well as the head of growth and marketing? So I feel like head of growth would be something that Correlated would definitely want to go after, because you're kind of like the glue between marketing and sales, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I think we're starting to see my type of title more often, but it's not built into every company and to the genes of every company. But where we do see it, yeah, definitely. Things like growth or life cycle marketing or customer marketing, things like that could definitely benefit as well.
Breezy, I want to dive into product-led growth. It's a relatively new term that I've heard for the first time. since meeting Troy, talking about you, saying, hey, Breezy's a thought leader in this space. Can you give us a simple definition on what product-led growth is and how companies use it as a strategy?
Yeah. So product-led growth is a go-to-market strategy. And so that means that everyone at the company needs to be on board, that they're putting the product at the center of everything that we're doing. And so what that means in practice is if you go to someone's website and you can easily get started with the product within a few clicks, that is a product-led growth company. And so then based on that, there's a couple different things that shift in the way that the company works. So you have people signing up to use the product. Now you have maybe free or lower tier product users. Then you also generally will have like what would be your normal sales process. So you still have other people coming in, maybe requesting demos, and going through that sales process. So there's kind of two motions happening at the same time, but they're very much not separate. In fact, a lot of times you'll see someone will sign up to use the product. They might use it for a couple of days, then request a demo, then your product. It's like all intertwined and very messy, but very messy in a way that is worth the effort because the total amount of pipeline will be much higher.
It's so true. And I'm like gonna fanboy out now because I first started looking at I came across Breezy, I think around like a year and a half ago or a year ago. And she was talking about product-led revenue and product-led growth. And I was like, had no clue what the hell that meant and was basically looking at it. And then all of a sudden I started talking to some of my VC friends and started about before we kicked off our fundraise. And all they started asking me, Troy, okay, what's your PLG strategy? And what is that? And then I go, do you have PLG strategies? Are they there? Are they already existing? And then I said, basically, okay, well, I'm gonna go to Breezy's profile and basically just watch her last 10 videos to ultimately see what the heck this is. And it's funny, right? Like, I feel like when you put the product like essentially at the forefront of everything, but it really is a true actual, and I'm a lead generation kind of advocate and I love leads, obviously. It's a great inbound tool as well. So for example, we probably need Correlated to ultimately set up our system. But really where we're at is like, I can look at the back end Stripe account on our basically forward-facing website. And if a customer doesn't make it all the way through to maybe signing up with their credit card, for example, I will have their email and I will have their name. And so what I'll be able to do is pass that along to my XDR team, as Breezy likes to put it, and say, hey guys, you should totally reach out to Tristen Ross and ultimately make sure that he ultimately see what happens and why he didn't want to sign up, or make him get to the point of signing up. So there's multiple different, everything now that I think we create, Tristen, is ultimately is based on a product-led growth strategy that we can implement. And correct. I think Breezy maybe can talk this. I feel like PLG is like now, it was like a big thing in 2021, but it's an even bigger thing now in 2022, right?
Yeah, I feel like, and I was actually going to say, I think it stems a lot from pressure from investors, right. But just to get the conversation started, and then that starts the conversation, and then you're like, you know what, this might actually make a lot of sense for us, which hopefully is the case. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of benefits to be had there, right? So you generally will have a shorter sales cycle. You'll have multiple opportunities for expansion throughout the year. Your net dollar retention is higher. There's a lot of really great financial metrics that sort of back up a product-led growth model. What I think one of the misconceptions is that you think like, oh, if we're PLG, then we don't have what you would like we don't have a sales team, or we don't do marketing or something like that, which is, and I've said it over and over, so you probably hear me say it, but like, it's just very much not the case. And it's strange to me that it's still such a misconception. I'll hear it multiple times per week that people think that sales doesn't exist in a product-led growth company. It's like product-led growth is almost like an amplifier to what you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's an additional strategy on top of what you're doing. It does slightly shift each role. So like the example that you just gave a second ago, Troy, is like, that wouldn't be something you would have normally been able to do if you had more of just a traditional sales process. But now in PLG, you have a lot more data to be able to look at, okay, what can we do? Like, what actions are people taking that we could look at to say, okay, when should we convert them to a paying customer? And now that they're a paying customer, what actions should we look at to say, okay, how can we, sell a different product to that person and get them to get more value out of our platform? Or how can we get them to convert to the next level of our product and get more people adopting it at their company? And so it sort of like shifts the way you work a little bit, but in my opinion, in a much smarter fashion, in a way that's beneficial to the company, but also to the customer who's actually having value add conversations rather than just kind of like yearly check-ins to be like, do you want to start paying more next year? What do you think?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that's great. And I want to switch gears here, and it's almost like we're going in reverse. But I want to get away from Breezy, the head of growth and marketing, and how did you find yourself in this position? Like, what did you study in school? Why are you so passionate about product-led growth? It seems like it's obvious that you're great at your job professionally, like all that kind of stuff, but like, what drove you to choose this career path?
I'm a big personal finance person. So like, I like to invest in real estate. I studied personal finance for years before I could make any certain types of investments or this or that. So I really like all the finance metrics behind things. And so product-led growth, I think, lends well to seeing how are people converting, what ways can we make, micro improvements across all stages of our process and I think that sort of amplifies my interest in it all. I think what originally piqued it though was the idea that PLG companies could really disrupt a market that's working and performing and doing exceedingly well. And then you see a product-led growth company dive into that same, market with other companies, and they're 5+ years behind, maybe even 25 years behind. And they completely just blow up everything that was existing there. And I just find it like really interesting that you can completely disrupt something that is working and growing and completely fine, and really shake things up. And I think that the reason I like it isn't just because it's like making a mess or like that it's like, ruining something, but the reason I like it is because it's developing and changing in a way that I think the world should be developing and changing. Buyers want the ability to test out products and try them for themselves and see what value they can get. They want to choose whether they get on a 30-minute or 60-minute call versus being able to dive in or being able to have like just an educated conversation when you get on the phone instead of just waiting for someone on the other line to tell you what they think you need to hear. So I think this way that it's disrupting is in a way that's beneficial to creating better software because it pushes you to make a better product, and also letting the buyers sort of be in charge of where they want to go in this journey, as well as letting the people on the other end, the sellers, be better at their craft. It forces everyone to get better at what they're doing.
Incredibly well said. And I know we only have you here for a short amount of time, but the value, like in the way my brain works is I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of what parts of this interview and what you're saying is going to provide value to everyone else. And it's going to be very difficult for me to pick out the ones that I want to share because there's so much in here. Troy, is there any other questions you want to selfishly ask Breezy while we have her here?
No, I'd say, listen, I think, Breezy, I think it's the first time of us meeting, but I've learned a lot from you just organic with your content. And I would just say keep posting that content. You're truly a thought leader in the space. And I would say I've learned a lot. I like to talk and I like to be on the forefront of sales. And ultimately, I think the tough part about sales sometimes is where you try to convince someone on the other side, maybe we don't have all the information in the world. And I think the great thing about a PLG strategy is you can capture so much information through the product and the buyer that Breezy was saying, and actually that kind of acts as somewhat, everyone loves this term, intent data. And really you can take that intent data or the basically engagement data from that buyer, that potential sale, and then use that to basically have a more organic conversation when you're going to sell. And so I like to thank Breezy because ultimately she helped us put some PLG strategies in place that aren't fully built out yet, but are going to be pretty spectacular when they are. And I mean, that's the forward focus of where we're going with Greencube and Greencube X. And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, Breezy, and have you on today.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, this has been fun. I liked diving into all this. And if I can help with anything else in other ways, let me know. So happy to help.
We'll definitely be calling you.
Incredible. All right, Breezy. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
all right.
of course.
Sign it off.
Bye.
Bye-bye.